Hey everybody, it's Big Daddy Liberty here, your favorite fat boy. I'm joined by a very special guest, someone who I think, politically speaking, is perhaps saying something which no one else is saying, and it's refreshing for a change to hear a aspirant politician, and really an aspirant politician who leans strongly on the side of liberty, seeking to get into the, or rather getting involved in the battle of ideas, in the political space in particular. Jack, of course, is the leader of the Cape Party, which is a political party based in the Western Cape, but will be contesting the national elections, yes?
The Western Cape provincial elections.
All right, there you go, the provincial elections. But with that being said, Jack, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for joining us. Let me jump straight into it. Jack, tell us about your background. Are you born and bred in the Western Cape? Why is there such a passion, as we can hear when I've heard your other interviews and stuff? Why is there such a passion for the Western Cape?
Cecily, well, first of all, thanks for having me. It's great to see you again. The Cape is my home, and I've lived here my whole life. It's one, there's a rooting in, just look around you.
Yeah.
How beautiful is this place? For me, I've done a fair bit of traveling around the world, but when I come back here, it's magic. It's home.
Yeah.
So there's that element as to why I'm doing this. And the other, which is more important from a political point of view, is that the system is broken, the system has failed us, and we need to not just fix it, but change it fundamentally. And I've listened to a lot of your work, and I think I'd like to go into more details about what the Cape Party stands for, what
Absolutely.
we're trying to achieve, and I think we may be on the same page on a few issues.
We very well may be, and that's the thing about liberty. It's the ideas transcend any particular party colours, so that you may find that any political party may have a particular idea that leans on the side of liberty, and I may support it. But I must say, full disclosure, this is apolitical, or I am apolitical. I don't support any political party. But again, the ideas that we hear here, I may very well support and back. But on that point, Jack, let me jump maybe straight into it. Cape Party, how long have you guys been around? And really, what is the fundamental, let's call it worldview or foundation that the Cape Party sits on, before we get into the policy proposals and your manifesto?
We've been around since 2007. And as some of your viewers might be familiar with, we have got a platform for greater autonomy. Essentially, our starting point is a federal system.
Yeah.
Following that, if the ANC government, as well as the DA here in the provincial government, will not negotiate with us, then we will be forced to proceed down the next step in the pathway, which is to ask the people of the Western Cape in a referendum on independence. If they vote in favour of it, if the majority is in favour, we will then declare the Cape an independent country. Now, this in 2007 hadn't quite reached its maturity yet. The electorate still believed that the Rainbow Nation that we had been sold by the ANC, that the DA was purporting to advocate. And here we are in 2019, and we have a DA which is now looking like ANC light.
Yep.
We have an ANC that you don't even hear the word Rainbow Nation anymore.
Yeah.
We're now hearing about land expropriation without compensation. They've basically cast 70% of the Western Cape population into second-class citizenship.
Yeah.
And over the last 2 years, we found that in by-elections, we're very pleased to see that we've been polling at about 8%, one by-election, 10% another by-election, another ward we got almost 20%. So there is certainly, we're seeing a shift, a changing, in that this idea of Cape independence and greater autonomy was perhaps too early in 2007. There were still hopes that the ANC would fulfill its original vision and dream, that the DA would be able to actually protect minorities and work for the best interests of the people of the Cape. And we now see that both the ANC and the DA have failed dismally, and that's being quite polite. We're actually heading towards a very dangerous situation, a Zimbabwe type situation, and serious action needs to be taken. And as a result of that, we're seeing a lot of support in the Western Cape turning to the Cape Party and the vision that we share.
I think you're also articulating a frustration, at least one that I'm picking up on my social media feeds, from ordinary people who are almost echoing these sentiments, who are wondering, who do we vote for? It seems like it's just different iterations of the same stuff, racial nationalism to varying degrees, with the DA also now beginning to sort of slide into that direction of, wanting to pander to racial groupings with policies that speak to racial groupings. And for as much as they deny it, right, when you confront them with this, when a party says, look, we use race as a proxy for empowerment, for example, that is a form of racial nationalism. But I digress. I think your message therefore cuts through that and essentially proposes an alternative. And maybe let's jump into that, insofar as, look, Jack, someone watching might say, look, okay, Jack, cool. Let's say you are voted in and, hey, let's say you guys actually win outright, the Western Cape. Tell us about the nitty-gritties. What does that even look like? You sort of alluded to it, right? So on the one hand, it would begin with a negotiation with the powers that be at the moment, but essentially, here are guys who, every state politician is essentially backed by guns. And the ANC are no different at a national level. They are backed by a police force, which they ever increasingly want to centralize. The powers of, and of course, the army, dodgily equipped as it may be now because of all the corruption, but essentially still, these are still very well-trained and armed men who would have to listen to the whims of national politicians who may not like your idea to secede. How do you pull this off when there is that real threat of state violence behind a national government?
I think that's not an unfair claim, but I think we're so far off that at this point. And that is spoken from the perspective of 2019, which is completely fair.
Yeah.
But I believe what we're going to see as we move further and further down this pathway of African nationalism and essentially racist rhetoric coming from the ANC, will that rhetoric actually transpire into physical actions? Well, expropriation without compensation is going to be the first severe test of that. Mm-hmm. And we'll see how far that rhetoric actually becomes real political danger.
Yeah.
Now, what we're going to see, I believe, is a gradual fracturing of the political system. It's not just us here in the Cape that are disillusioned and disappointed and, in fact, fearful about the future. We have been in contact by members of the Abu Tembu tribe in the Eastern Cape, who are calling for independence for their region in the Eastern Cape. We have made contact with individuals in the Shaka, King Shaka Nation who are talking about something similar. We have a historical backdrop of Sutus having their own country, Lesotho, Swazis having their own country, Iswazi, Tswanas having their own country, Botswana. So we do have a history of decentralization and community aspirations being pursued at a community level, at a local level. And so I think the Cape will be one element that will find itself so detached politically and economically from the centralized government. I think we're going to see similar fissuring and detachments from other parts of the country. And after all, South Africa is not even a natural country. In 1910, it was the British Empire, which forced us into this colonial mistake after the Boer Wars. And prior to that, we were independent regions. So I think it's just a matter of time. This historical mistake, this colonial mistake will come to an end, and it will be for the best interest of the people in the Cape, the people in KwaZulu-Natal, and the people around the country.
Jack, before we move on to your policy platform and the manifesto you'll be advancing to Cape voters, there is a perception, a very strong one, it comes out quite a lot, and I want you to use this platform to address it directly. You'll have someone who says, well, that Cape Party, all it really is a project of, white South Africans, who've moved to the Western Cape, and they just are fed up with black people in the rest of the country, and they want their own country now, their own little enclave to call their own. And, how do you address that? I'm trying to parrot it as best as I can, but essentially it's the racial argument.
It's right wing, it's racist, it's extremist, it's
the usual tropes.
The usual tropes, and quite frankly, we laugh it off. We laugh it off because at this point it has become such a joke, and the core matter here is fear of political discussion. Political discourse is what they do not want to have. How do you shut down conversation in South Africa? You go, you are a racist. End of conversation. Nothing else that comes out of your mouth matters because you're a racist, and I don't want to hear it. It's a childish, manipulating, and frankly dangerous step that the government has taken now for 25 years, getting worse and worse, and it stops political and meaningful discourse. It's now been so flogged to death, this whole race card, that I don't think people take it seriously. And I think maybe that's why the electorate and voters are starting to open their ears, open their eyes, and look at alternatives and go, well, what would greater autonomy mean for the Western Cape? Why do you want to do that? If you do get an independent Cape, what does that look like? And these are really exciting things that people are very encouraged and enthused by. So we disregard the racist claims. The Western Cape is the most racially diverse region in South Africa, and in fact in most of the world. We've always had more open liberal values here. The reason we have a majority mixed ethnic population is not because of rape and pillage and murder. In fact, in late 1660s, just after Jan van Riebeeck arrived, the most powerful man in the Cape was Governor Simon van der Stel.
That's right.
A colored man, a mixed race man. So, all these lies about the history of South Africa, which only existed in the 1910, but this long history here, it is complex. I'm not sugarcoating. There were certainly terrible periods, and there's terrible periods throughout. Apartheid, the Imfakane, slavery. These things were going on throughout the world in those periods of time. Thank goodness we live in a new world now where these types of things are not happening. But the Cape does have a different value system. It does have a multi-ethnic population. And we really look forward to maximizing our potential, where we judge people not on their skin color, but on their merit and their ability and their value and character as a person. And we would like to see ourselves become something like Singapore. We love the political model of Switzerland, which is a canton system where you don't have one dictator telling us all how to live our lives, but each community can have its own slightly different value system or largely different value system, whatever it might be. And then from an economic point of view, we look to Singapore. Singapore also had a colonial past, has got mixed ethnicity from Chinese to British expats who were the colonial force, to a Muslim, to Indonesian, Malaysian. There's a real mixture of different cultures, different races, different religious groups, and they were at each other's throats in the early 1960s. Lee Kuan Yew took Singapore in 1960 to being one of the highest incomes per capita, lowest unemployment, highest standards of living, and you do not want to throw stones at your neighbor because he's a different skin color to you. If you got food on your table, you're working together in a strong economic environment, and all of these these sneaky methods that the Zimbabwean government used, and now the South African government is using, to hide their own failings and to blame everything on race. It's simply to take the microscope away from their own inability and to try and focus it on something else that they know is an easy target.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Big Liberty Show. Thanks for staying with us. We're talking to Jack Miller from the Cape Party. Remember, if you want to support the show, and I really encourage you to, you can do so by becoming a friend of the ILR. That simply requires that you SMS your name to 32823. Each SMS costs R1. Terms and conditions apply. Or find us online at irr.org.za /join. And you can support the show. Jack, let's talk about the manifesto. This is your key promise, your key commitment, if you will, to Cape voters. Perhaps just to guide the conversation, let me begin by maybe framing it as the big three things, right? Which would be education, because it's an enabling opportunity, the economy, which of course is the engine of any country. And actually, I'll let you sort of give me anything other than those two. Maybe those are the two rather that I want to hear the Cape Party's message around, and then we'll have a chat about anything else. Talk to me on education.
Okay, absolutely. Before I get into education, let's actually start with the engine room.
Yeah.
And it's all economic.
Yeah.
And I want to talk about something called the Division of Revenue Act.
Yes.
And what that is how the national government takes resources from the various provinces into the national treasury and then allocates it out to each province, and then obviously to cover their national projects like 62 billion rands on submarines and tanks and fighter jets that I think everyone's still asking today what we need it for. So besides all of that money being wasted down the drain, to put it politely, economics is the crux of everything. Yeah. And so to let your viewers know what's happening specifically here in the Western Cape. The Western Cape pays about 200 billion rand in taxes every year. We get back a mere 50 billion rand in our local and our provincial allocation. What that means is that over 75% of the revenue produced here in the Western Cape, we are losing direct access to. So one of the Cape Party's primary push is that we need to change the Division of Revenue Act. The Act has to change, and we need a greater return of the resources that are produced here in the Western Cape to come back so that we can address issues like education, like infrastructure, like policing, like health, housing, etc. These are all things that are now failing dismally as a result of a complete lack of resources. A result of these lack of resources, we have the Democratic Alliance in power raising rates and taxes to an extent where, on a personal level, my godmother had to sell her house in Sea Point because she could not afford the rates anymore. And that's just one example. And I know many people that are going through similar tribulations like that. They just cannot afford the rates that the DA is imposing on them. So we need to change the Division of Revenue Act. With more resources, we will be able to better facilitate a stronger police force to secure our streets. We will housing has been a big issue. We need to address the concerns in a lot of the areas which we've had people on a housing list up to 40 years, but because of their skin color, because of national and provincial policies, are not getting a roof over their head. So these are issues that we need to look at. From a decentralized platform, we believe that all of these things you've mentioned here and I've referred to comes down to the best way we can address it is by having community-based governance. So I'm going to add to education, I'm also going to add policing. I also believe that healthcare needs to be handled by local doctors who know the communities, that have a relationship with the people that they are serving. Teachers. You cannot have a national political entity with communist values dictating to the youth of this country how they should think about history, how they should think about economics, and basically producing ANC voters. And this is unfortunately what happens in a political system, is the government who's in power uses the education system not to educate people to become productive and effective members of society. They educate them to become voters for their agenda. And this is the disconnect that has happened. So in order to make sure that our children are learning the right things, we want to devolve, educate the responsibilities of education down to a provincial level. Even further, we want parents to play a pivotal role in what their children learn. So we still need to flesh this out with the Western Cape Education Board to get into the details, but essentially there needs to be a legitimate structure put in place where teachers who where parents who are essentially either sending their kids to public schooling or semi-public schooling where they're paying fees, they need to have a say in what their children are learning, and to make sure that those children get an education that makes them productive members of society when they get out there in the workplace. And the third element we would put into play there would be an apprentice system. The only way you can learn properly is by someone who's actually done it themselves. So bring in a fisherman, bring in a carpenter, bring in a lawyer, bring in a doctor, and have children learning from the people who are actually doing it. That's how we're going to build a strong base of an educated youth that then goes into our economy and builds a strong, expanding economy where the pie is not shrinking, but it's expanding and there's more to go around for everyone.
What is your approach on issues of health?
We need to remove the inefficiencies, and it all comes down to the same thing. The more bureaucracy that you have, the more red tape you have, the more centralized the system is, the less accountability you have. Be it in the health industry, be it in policing, be it in education, be it in revenue collection and revenue spending. So my answer will be very much aligned. The same way we fix the policing issue is the same way we fix the health issue. And we need to reduce the distance between the decision makers and the clients receiving those services. And when you do that, you get a better return for your investment, a more human connection between doctor and patient, and as a result, better results. So we believe that we need to provincialize those responsibilities, and moving forward, we have a longer term vision. So we understand where the state of the country is right now and all of the problems that we've discussed here. But these are all problems that exist within the framework of an ANC-run national government. If we do not get that referendum or that negotiation with the national and provincial powers to improve the things that we've discussed here, we're then forced to go the full independence route. With the independence route, what do we look for? Well, we're looking at not left policies or right policies. We're looking at policies that work, policies that are right as opposed to wrong. And we look at the world as a laboratory for places which have succeeded, places that have failed. And we look to Singapore for its economic freedoms, and we look to Switzerland for its direct democracy and its accountability. So perhaps in a later interview I can go into more details about those things, but we have a short-term vision, a medium-term vision, and a long-term vision. But essentially the core of it is we need to decentralize, give community members a greater say over the policies that they live under and the way that revenue is spent.
Jack, on that wonderful note, thank you very much. And yeah, again, I think some of the ideas and the principles you stand with are look, they're a tough sell in our country, unfortunately, given the amount of statism that people know. We've never had a period in this country where our politics speaks to actually empowering the individual, empowering the family, empowering decentralized structures. So I wish you well in that regard. Maybe as giving you the final say, what should we expect to see from the Cape Party in terms of your campaigning, and please punt your details insofar as social media and websites, etc., etc.
Great, yeah. Everyone's welcome to like us on Cape Party Free the Cape on our Facebook page. If they've got some more time and they want to read through the manifesto, which I highly recommend, please go to capeparty.com. It's a big red button there, download manifesto. With regards to our campaigning, we've been campaigning non-stop for the last few months. We're going to continue campaigning through Cape Town and the Western Cape. If people would like to join us and get involved, they're absolutely welcome to. And we're hoping to send a message out there. We're hoping to hold the DA to account and begin the process of putting us on the right political direction and pull us out of the fire, because we're heading in the wrong direction right now.
Jack, thank you very much for your time, and thank you for watching. This show will bring you more interviews with, not only the leaders, but also the supporters of South African political parties, including our more smaller parties that just do not get the sort of coverage that you'll find in mainstream media. Guys, thank you so much for watching. As I said, please support the show. Please, please, please. It helps me get out there to talk to interesting people in the country, and of course to bring you more content. And with that being said, thank you for watching the Big Liberty Show. I will see you guys on the next one.